Hello everyone and welcome to my Bachelor Nation 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Golden Bachelorette Joan Vassos had to relearn love. The first ever Golden Bachelorette, Joan Vassos, admitted that she had to relearn how to be in love. She was brokenhearted when her husband of over 30 years passed away. That being said, there was a lot to digest when she was faced with 24 men vying for her heart. So how did she handle it, and moreover, how did she open her heart back up? Keep reading for more details. Joan Vassos had to relearn love. When Joan Vassos lost the love of her life in 2021, it was the worst devastation imaginable. John was her lifeline for 32 years, and the thought of ever dating again clearly was not on her mind. She then went on to be a contestant on the premiere season of The Golden Bachelor with Jerry Turner. The two had an amazing connection, and they did look amazing together. However, Joan's family came first and her daughter needed her, so she left the possibility of love behind. He ended up marrying Theresa Nist, but they split after just 3 months. Now, Joan is the first Golden Bachelorette and men are head over heels for her. It is the 5th week of the show, and she has some really strong connections with the remaining gents. Some of them are Jordan Heller, Jonathan Roan, and Chalk Chapel. They have swept her off of her feet, especially Chalk. This has been hard for Joan as she still has John on her mind, but as she told us weekly, she had to relearn how to fall in love. It was not easy, and that was where the show's psychiatrist came in handy. Joan Vassos did not shy away from getting help to deal with her emotions regarding her late husband. Admittedly, she felt like she was being unfaithful. Many times, she thought she was ready to go all in, and then she found herself holding back. Joan Vassos genuinely liked all of the men that came onto the show. Therefore, every rose ceremony, she wanted to leave the series. It broke her to have to hurt anyone, but many of the men have said that the friendships they made in the mansion have made it well worth it. As for what she was looking for, the Golden Bachelorette needed a fixer. That was what John was, and she saw that in Chalk Chapel. She learned a lot about him and how he did all he could to help his late wife when she fell ill. Joan's journey is not over just yet, and she still has hometown visits. She will meet her suitors' families and learn even more about them. Until then, she is trying to live in the moment while honoring herself and John. Finally, Joan is proving that age is just a number when it comes to love. She is breaking the stigma and hopefully finding her happy ending. Joan Vassos never expected to be in this position. At 68, after the loss of her beloved husband, she thought her days of romance were behind her. Love had been a closed chapter, a beautiful, albeit bittersweet, memory. But life has a way of surprising even the most prepared hearts. Now, standing on the precipice of newfound feelings, Joan was ready to embrace love again, though not without hesitation. She had to relearn everything, and that was no easy task. The journey began when Joan agreed to be the leading lady on The Golden Bachelorette, a decision that shocked her family, her friends, and even herself. She had seen her daughters and nieces go through their dating adventures and had lived vicariously through their ups and downs, but for herself, that seemed impossible. Grief had wrapped itself around her heart like a familiar, if not comfortable, blanket. It felt safe, even though it was cold and lonely. Yet the idea of giving love another chance, even in her golden years, began to tug at Joan's curiosity. Could love be different this time? Could it be softer, more mature, and understanding? Was there room for love when you've already lived a full life? These questions buzzed in her mind as she signed her name on the dotted line to join the reality show. Her nerves were off the charts, but beneath the butterflies, a spark of excitement flickered. When the show began, Joan realized just how much she had to unlearn before she could relearn anything. Gone were the carefree, youthful days of whirlwind romances, the heady rush of infatuation, and the blind leaps of faith. Now her heart carried the weight of experience, of loss, of love that had been deep and abiding. She had to relearn what it meant to be vulnerable, without the safety net of youthful naivety. It was a daunting task, but Joan knew that if she didn't open herself up, she would never know if love could find her again. The men vying for Joan's heart were just as seasoned as she was. Some had been married before, others had never found the one. They were all navigating their own hardships and triumphs, and Joan quickly realized that dating in her golden years came with unique challenges. It wasn't about the chemistry of youth, but rather the compatibility of shared values and life goals. It was about finding someone who understood her grief, someone who could appreciate the depth of her journey and still want to walk beside her in whatever time they had left. But Joan's biggest obstacle wasn't the men, it was herself. Relearning love meant confronting her past, her insecurities, and most of all, her fear. Fear that she wasn't worthy of love anymore. Fear that she was too old, too scarred, too set in her ways. Fear that no one could love her the way her husband had. Joan's inner dialogue often spiraled into these doubts, and each time a contestant looked at her with admiration or spoke to her with genuine interest, she questioned if it was real or just a part of the game. "I feel like I'm learning how to love all over again," Joan confessed to one of the producers one evening, her eyes misty as she gazed out over the ocean from the balcony of the grand mansion. "I forgot what it's like to let someone in, to really let them in." The producer nodded, offering her a warm smile. "That's the beauty of this, Joan. You're not alone in that. Everyone here is relearning what it means to open up again." That moment hit her hard. She realized she wasn't the only one scared, the only one unsure if her heart could handle the risk of love again. The men she was dating had their own stories of loss, of rebuilding, of letting go. She saw that in their eyes, the unspoken understanding that love, at their age, was as much about healing as it was about joy. One particular moment with Charles, a charming widower with a quiet strength, encapsulated her entire emotional journey. They sat together during a dinner date, candles flickering between them, and as Joan talked about her late husband, Charles reached across the table and took her hand in his. "You don't have to forget him to love again," Charles said softly. "You just have to make room in your heart for someone new." Joan's breath caught in her throat. The simple wisdom in his words was like a key unlocking something deep within her. Charles understood. He wasn't asking her to replace the love she had lost. He was offering her the chance to add a new chapter to her story. That was when Joan realized that relearning love wasn't about starting from scratch. It was about expanding her heart, about allowing herself to feel the joy and pain of loving again without erasing what had come before. As the weeks went by on the Golden Bachelorette, Joan found herself opening up more and more. The walls she had built around her heart began to crumble as she laughed, cried, and connected with the men in ways she hadn't expected. She was learning that love at her age was deeper, more intentional. It wasn't about fiery passion or impulsive decisions. It was about companionship, about finding someone who could hold her hand through the quiet moments, someone who could sit with her in the silence and still make her feel understood. Joan's daughters watched from the sidelines, amazed at their mother's transformation. They had always admired her strength, but now they saw a new side of her, one that was soft, vulnerable, and willing to embrace the unknown. It was as if Joan was rediscovering parts of herself that had been buried for so long under the weight of grief. When the final rose ceremony came, Joan stood before the last two men with a heart that was no longer heavy with fear. She had relearned what it meant to love, not just someone else, but herself. She had given herself permission to believe in love again, to trust that she could be loved in return, even with all her life's baggage. And as she handed that final rose to Charles, Joan knew that her journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. Relearning love had taught her that love doesn't have an expiration date. It only grows richer with time, like a fine wine or a well-lived life.